Do you know what it is to have everything, then lose it in a day? I do. My name is Job, and this is my story. I lived in the ancient region of Uz. I was a well-known man who respected virtue and wealth. I had many animals and was blessed with 7 sons and 3 daughters. My lavish flocks, productive farms, and devoted family filled my house with love. My days were filled with purpose as I cared for my crops, shepherded my sheep, and administered justice with a strict and fair hand. I felt as though life had given me its most priceless gifts, and I was incredibly grateful for everything in my life. But I had no idea how quickly my faith, my fortitude, and my very identity would be tested. The Almighty and the accuser, Satan, were discussing in the celestial realm. The latter, ever the cynic, questioned the veracity of my dedication and said that my steadfast faith was merely a result of my fortunate upbringing. A divine bet was made, allowing my trust to go through a test of faith, even though it was decided that my bodily form would stay unharmed. I was hit by the storm of tribulations with an intensity I had never imagined. One day, while my sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, a messenger came and reported to me. While the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, the Sabeans swooped down and took them away. They put the servants to the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was speaking, another messenger came and reported, the fire of God fell from heaven. It burned and consumed the sheep and the servants, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and reported, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away. They put the servants to the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and reported, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then I stood up, tore my robes, and shaved my head. I fell to the ground in worship, saying, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, I did not sin or charge God with wrongdoing. The challenges persisted unabatedly. Even though I clung to the frail embers of faith that still burned within my heart, I quickly began to experience pain that was not limited to the body due to the accuser's unrelenting pursuit. My body began to explode in agonizing boils, turning me into the pitiful shadow of the man I once was. I scraped my wounds with a piece of pottery as I sat among the ashes and dust, each scrape reflecting the chaos raging inside of me. As my condition got worse with each passing day, my wife came up to me one day and said, do you still retain your integrity? Curse God and die! You speak as a foolish woman speaks, I told her. Should we accept from God only good and not adversity? In all this, I never sinned in what I said. Now, when my 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all this adversity that had come upon me, each of them came from his home, and they met together to go and sympathize with me and comfort me. When they lifted their eyes from afar, they could barely recognize me. They began to weep aloud, and each man tore his robes and threw dust in the air over his head. Then they sat on the ground with me for 7 days and 7 nights, but no one spoke a word to me because they saw how intense my suffering was. Their presence was meant to bring me comfort and act as a salve for open wounds. Like all friends, they intended to comfort me. But as the days progressed into weeks and the weeks into months, our discussions transformed into ferocious arguments. Their themes influenced by our effort to solve the riddle of my pain. They debated the causes of my suffering, trying to fit it into the framework of divine justice. They sincerely thought that my pain must be the result of a sin that I was not confessing, and they pleaded with me to turn from my sin and ask for forgiveness. Eliphaz concluded that my suffering must be due to some sin I had done. He commented that I seek God's favor. Bildad and Zohar agreed that I must have committed some evil to provoke God's justice, and that I was supposed to attempt to manifest more innocent behavior. Bildad supposed that my own children brought death upon themselves. Even worse, Zohar replied, "Are all these words to go unanswered? Is this talker to be vindicated? Will your idle talk reduce others to silence? Will no one rebuke you when you mock? You say to God, 'My beliefs are flawless and I am pure in your sight.' Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom. For true wisdom has two sides." They assumed that my troubles were a sure sign of God's judgment. I screamed out at the sky amidst the commotion of arguments and the unrelenting agony that tore at my body and soul. My voice had transformed into a vehicle for the agony that crept up inside me, a complaint that rose to the very throne of God. I dared to ask out loud why the wicked frequently seemed to prosper, while I, a virtuous man, was left to sulk in the background, challenging the very foundation of justice itself. Amid the confusion that appeared to envelop my life, each question I asked was a cry for help, an impassioned request for comprehension. My daily food had become sighing and groaning like water. What I had feared had come upon me. What I had dreaded had happened to me. I had no peace, no quietness. I had no rest, but only turmoil. My spirit was broken. My days were cut short. The grave awaited me. In my moment of desperation, I cursed the day I was born. I lamented the day I was conceived and wished that I had died at birth. Then, as the days dragged on and my spirit grew weary from the burden of ambiguity, a divine symphony started to unfold. The sky split open, and the voice of the All-Powerful responded like thunder from a storm. His words were a tapestry of universal truths, a revelation of wisdom that went beyond my capacity for comprehension. He discussed the wonders of creation, the dancing constellations in the velvety night sky, and the complexity of life that was beyond our understanding. He questioned me, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding, who fixed its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its foundations set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" I had no answers. My questions were put to rest by the grandeur of His majesty, as I felt simultaneously humbled and amazed in His presence. I was changed by divine speech, which was like a flowing torrent of discoveries. I was able to catch a glimpse of a reality that had previously escaped me, as if scales had dropped from my eyes. My spirit was humbled by the wisdom of the Almighty, and I bowed to the ground in awe. I was given a deep insight that my finite mind could never fully comprehend the complex web of life. I knelt and apologized for my audacity with a fresh sense of humility, my soul now submitting to the infinite knowledge of the divine. And after the holy conversation, a sequence of things happened that would provide light on my redemption route. My friends received criticism from the Almighty for their well-intended but flawed advice. As part of His unending mercy, He gave them an order to make sacrifices as a mark of repentance for the foolishness of their statements. As for me, I underwent a wonderful change. The benefits of restoration outweighed even the abundance of my prior riches and flowed like a river. My flocks increased, my herds flourished, and my home resounded with children's laughter. 10 more to be precise, a sign of the wealth of God's grace. My latter years were more blessed than the former ones. I owned 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camel, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. I also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. As I neared the end of my life and looked back at the tapestry of my journey, I was astounded by the complex interactions between suffering and redemption. loss, and restoration. My descendants prospered, and the history books bear witness to my legacy as a man of unwavering faith. I realized through the lens of my experience that pain was not a sign of divine vengeance, but rather a place of change, a furnace that might purify the soul and strengthen the connection between humans and the divine. As I considered the chapters of my life, each challenge a triumph, each tear a proclamation, I am reminded that true faith is not the absence of doubt or suffering, but the unshakable trust in the invisible hand that leads our footsteps, even when the way is shrouded in shadows. My story continues to inspire people of all ages because it is a story of faith that was put to the test in the face of adversity and finally polished by the fires of heavenly insight. It demonstrates the tenacity of the human spirit, the continuing strength of faith in the face of uncertainty, and the incomprehensible ways in which God creates meaning from the threads of suffering and salvation. My journey across the landscape of pain and sanctification, of doubt and dedication, serves as a beacon of hope and inspiration for those who navigate the turbulent waters of existence. Because during my struggle, I came to understand a truth that goes beyond space and time, a truth that speaks to the unbreakable power of the human spirit, the transforming force of unwavering faith, and the steadfast presence of a Creator who leads us through the darkest of nights toward the dawn of redemption and renewal.